In an industry that constantly reinvents itself, discards legends, and rewards reinvention over roots, Gene Watson did the unthinkable. He never changed. And somehow, against all odds, he still won. This isn't the story of a one-time comeback. This is the story of a man who, after losing everything in the 80s, didn't just reclaim his career. He outlasted an entire generation of trends. While the world embraced auto-tune and bro country, Gene Watson kept singing steel guitar ballads in theaters and dusty old honky-tonks. And little by little, he helped make traditional country cool again. This is the second rise of Gene Watson, the part of the story most people don't know, the years that followed the storm, when the industry counted him out, and he became a legend anyway. He didn't do it with a rebrand. He didn't dye his hair. He didn't chase pop radio. He just picked up a mic and told the truth, every night, for decades. And that was more revolutionary than anything else in country music at the time. After nearly losing his home, his career, and his dignity in 1984, Gene Watson clawed his way back with the help of George Jones, Merle Haggard, and the entire traditional country community. But what happened after the headlines faded? Most stars would have faded into obscurity, a few county fair gigs, a retirement show, a spot in a greatest hits package. Not Gene. He took every lesson from that near collapse and started over, smarter, tougher, and more in control. He hired a new manager, not a smooth-talking industry exec, but a meticulous, detail-driven woman from Texas who believed in numbers and contracts more than charm. He learned the business inside and out, formed his own publishing company, took control of every contract, every dime, every song. He even audited his old royalty statements line by line, discovering years of underpayment. It was exhausting, but empowering. And through it all, he never compromised his sound. He refused to trade steel guitar for synthesizers, refused to let Nashville push him into a box. He didn't evolve, he returned. And that's what made it special. In the 1990s, country music was changing again. Garth Brooks was selling out stadiums. Shania Twain was going platinum in 12 countries. Nashville was chasing slicker sounds, radio-friendly hooks, and crossover appeal. Gene Watson didn't follow the trend. He doubled down. He turned down songs that didn't fit his style. He turned down producers who wanted to clean up his sound. He even refused label deals that required him to bring in outside writers. "Son," he once told a new A&R guy, "I've made a living singing truth. I'm not going to start lying for a chart." He wasn't trying to be the biggest anymore, just the truest. And fans noticed. Slowly, word spread. If you want real country, you go see Gene Watson. At a time when country radio barely played him, his shows started filling up again. Not because of hits, because of honesty. Chapter 3. From dance halls to universities. 1030 to 1430. By the late 2000s, something strange happened. College students and music professors started showing up at Gene's shows. Why? Because they'd studied him. His voice, that flawless, reedy tenor, had become a masterclass in phrasing and tone. His business model, artist-controlled, debt-free, grassroots, was now being taught in music business schools. And his catalog of songs? It aged like whiskey. Farewell Party was no longer just a classic, it was a benchmark. One music professor in Austin referred to Watson as country music's control variable, meaning no matter how far country music drifted, Gene's voice could always take it back to center. Suddenly, he wasn't just an old legend, he was a living template. At a songwriting workshop, a student once asked Gene why he'd never recorded a dance remix of one of his hits. Gene looked confused. "Son," he said, "you ever seen a cowboy two-step to a remix?" The room erupted in laughter, not mockery, but respect. Because in that moment, they got it. Gene Watson wasn't a character, he was a compass. George Jones once said Gene Watson had the best voice in country music. That wasn't hyperbole, it was gospel. But as Gene's resurgence grew, something remarkable happened. The younger generation started listening too. Artists like Alan Jackson, Josh Turner, and Randy Travis began citing Gene Watson as a primary influence. Not just vocally, but professionally. He was proof that you could do it the old way and still matter. In 2005, at the CMA Awards, Gene was honored in a quiet backstage moment. He wasn't nominated for anything. He wasn't even on the performance lineup. But after the show, a dozen artists, including Brad Paisley and Leanne Womack, lined up just to shake his hand. "He taught us," Paisley would later say, "how to sing something that hurts." And then there were the duets. Over the next 10 years, Gene would go on to record songs with some of the biggest names in modern country. But only under one condition. They had to sing it his way. Live vocals, no auto-tune, steel guitar mandatory. They agreed, because when you're singing with Gene Watson, you don't fake it. In 2012, Gene was invited to perform at a tribute concert in Nashville. a big industry event featuring the new face of country. He wasn't top billed. In fact, he was scheduled third, right before a massive pyrotechnic-filled act that had more lights than lyrics. Gene walked out, wearing his usual jeans, boots, a pearl snap shirt. He said nothing, just nodded, took the mic, and sang 14 Karat Mine. By the final note, the crowd, including chart toppers who just performed, were on their feet. Not because it was flashy, not because it was trendy, but because it was perfect. After the show, a reporter asked him how he felt up there among the new wave. Gene smiled and said, "That ain't a wave. It's a ripple. We're still the river." When streaming took over the industry, many legacy artists were forgotten, but not Gene. His team quietly remastered his catalog and made sure every song, from B-sides to bootlegs, was available in pristine quality. The result? A whole new generation discovered him late at night on real country playlists. TikTok creators started using his songs in videos about grief, love, regret. Farewell Party became a funeral favorite again. And Gene? He didn't chase it. He didn't market it. He just kept playing shows. One night, one crowd at a time. In 2023, at 79 years old, Gene returned to the Grand Ole Opry. He wasn't there to promote anything. He was there because country music owed him that moment. He stood alone on the circle, guitar in hand, and sang Love in the Hot Afternoon. No backup singers, no lights, just the truth. It brought the house down. The crowd wasn't just clapping, they were crying. Because in that moment, everyone realized the greatest country singer alive had never needed a comeback. He was the standard. And somehow, after everything, the bankruptcy, the rejection, the shifting trends, Gene Watson still had his voice, still had his dignity, still had his soul. Gene Watson's story isn't just about music. It's about principles, about standing still while the world spins, about holding the line when everyone else is chasing something. He didn't just keep country music alive, he proved that truth, real, raw country truth, never goes out of style. So the next time someone asks you what real country sounds like, don't send them to the top of the charts. Send them to Gene Watson, because some legends don't retire. They just keep singing. Ask anyone who ever toured with Gene Watson and they'll tell you he wasn't flashy, but he was relentless. They'll talk about late-night drives after playing 3 sets in one night. They'll talk about how he always insisted on loading his own gear until his 60s, and how, even when he had the flu or a cracked rib, he never missed a note. There's a story from the early 2000s. Gene played an outdoor rodeo festival in Amarillo. Rain poured halfway through his set. The crew offered to stop the show. Gene waved them off. He walked out into the rain, stood at the edge of the stage, and sang Where Love Begins. No microphone, no guitar, just his voice. And the audience went dead silent. The promoter would later say, it was like watching George Strait and a preacher merge into one. In an age where social media likes replaced real feedback, Gene stayed old school. He read fan letters, everyone, and he replied to them, by hand. There's a woman in Missouri who lost her son in 2016. She wrote Gene a letter about how "you're out doing what I'm here doing without" helped her grieve. 3 weeks later, she got a reply, a letter written in Gene's unmistakable slanted script. No PR filter, no assistant. Just Gene, telling her he was honored to be part of her son's memory. That letter sits framed on her wall to this day. When most artists switched to digital, Gene held firm. He preferred analog tape. Every album he's made in the last 20 years was recorded on warm vintage machines. Because you can feel the soul in it, he says. In fact, one Nashville studio kept their reel-to-reel room open just for Gene. Sound engineers called him a one-take legend. No pitch correction, no edits, no cuts. Just Gene. Walking in, tuning up, and nailing it. They say the vocal mic he used still smells like Marlboro Reds and leather. Gene never started a mentorship program. He never tweeted advice. But behind the scenes, he changed lives. He helped struggling indie artists renegotiate unfair deals. He guided session players on how to protect their royalties. And he even paid for one young steel guitarist's rent, anonymously, after learning he was living in his truck between gigs. When asked why he did it, he said, "I just don't like watching good folks get eaten up." Gene's signature song, Farewell Party, has taken on a life of its own. It's played at funerals, celebrations, farewells of every kind. But for Gene, it was never just a song about dying. It's about letting go of what you can't change, he once said, and singing through the pain anyway. He's performed it more than 4,000 times, each version slightly different. Sometimes softer, sometimes growled with hurt, but always honest. And maybe that's the legacy, not just that he sang it, but that he meant it. But he did. He outlasted labels, fads, bankruptcies, bad contracts, and an entire wave of pop country dilution. He outsang most of his heroes, and he stayed exactly who he was, every step of the way. So when future generations talk about the heart of country music, don't point to the charts, point to Gene Watson. Because country didn't give him a throne. He built one with every note, and he never once sat down. Thank you for watching today's video. If you liked it, be sure to hit the thumbs up button and subscribe. It really helps our channel to grow.